Hi, my name's Chris from Driver Training Limited, and in today's video we're going to do an ADI Part 3 briefing for emerging left and right. So the first thing we need to do is open our briefing folder, and the first box is recap and experience. Have they done this before? If they have, then you can just use the questions at the bottom of the page just to see what their knowledge of the subject is. If they haven't, have they done anything similar? Well, they would have done left turns and right turns. So a lot of what we're going to do with regards to the mspsgl routine is going to come into this subject, thinking of things like moving off and pulling up. A lot of what we're going to do today is linked in to what we've already practiced with those things. So now then we go on to the goals for today's lesson. So by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to identify a junction, whether it is open or closed, use the mspsgl routine on approach, emerge left and right from a minor road onto a major road under control and with the due regard and safety for other road users. So the first thing we mentioned there was identifying a junction. For most people, if you've got a pupil who comes racing up to some junctions and then at other junctions they do the opposite and slow right down and you have to go, well, keep going. The chances are the reason they're doing that is they're not identifying if the junction is open or closed before they get there. And this is really one of the major keys with teaching people to be successful when emerging left or right. So first of all then, what is an open junction? Well, an open junction is one without any buildings, bushes or brickwork. So in our bottom picture there, as we're approaching it, we've got quite a good view to the left. We can see the parked car. We can look to the right and see the blue car coming. So in the top picture, we know as soon as that blue car's gone past, we're okay to carry on. And if you've got a chance of showing your pupil an open junction, pull up by it and let them see how you can see clearly on approach whether it is safe to go or not. So therefore, what is a closed junction? Well, a closed junction is one with buildings, bushes and brickwork. So in our bottom picture, it looks clear. As we approach in the middle picture, it still looks clear. And it's only once we're at the white line that we can actually see that there's two parked cars and a lorry on the wrong side of the road coming towards us. So this is why when you're teaching emerging, to help your pupil identify the junctions, pull up by one before you do this briefing. Then you can say to them, so as we look down the road, Chris, would you say this junction is open or closed? Then it gives them time to look and assess and really take in what the difference between open junctions and closed junctions are. So what we're going to do is have a look at a couple of real life examples. Now you may be picking your pupil up from their house, and as you're coming out of the car park, here's your first example. So you could stop them here and say, so this junction, Chris, as we look at it, is it open or closed? Can we see what's coming from the left or the right? And that point is now shown when the pedestrian just appears from nowhere. But remember, they've still got the junction to deal with. To the right, you've got the Royal Mail van, and the cars, you just can't see what's coming from either direction. But because that pedestrian has walked across, they'll think it's clear and then go to pull out. So in our second example, again here, we can pull them up and say, okay, Chris, looking at the junction ahead, would you say that's open or closed? Can we see anything coming from the right? Do we have that buildings, bushes or brickwork? And we can't see anything from the left either. So we know this is a closed junction. We're going to come up and stop. Same principle again. At this junction, Chris, is it open or closed? On the right, can we see if there are cars or vehicles coming up? Now they could be doing 40, 50 miles an hour and we just can't see them. So we know it's a closed junction. We're going to have to come up and stop at it. In our final example here again, is it open or closed? Well, again, we've got the buildings, bushes and brickwork. So here, because of the bushes and the trees, we can't see anything coming from the right or how fast it's going. And in the same way, we can't see anything approaching from the left either. So again, we know it's a closed junction. We need to stop. So once we've helped them identify it, we can then start to teach them how to deal with it. Now again, because they've done left turns or pulling up on the left, moving off and stopping, you can always ask them, so what mirrors do we use when we turn left or when we pull up on the left? Centre and left should be the answer. You can always ask them why, the importance of both mirrors. Then we can mention signal. Now on a left emerge, the signal timing will become important because you can have roads that are on the left before we get to the junction. So you could ask your pupil, so if we signal left at this point, Chris, what's that red car gonna think that we're doing? Then what's he likely to do? So if there is a junction there, we just need to make sure that we're at least halfway past it before we put our left signal on. We know then comes position. So when you turned left, Chris, what position did you take up? We want to do the same with the left emerge. Our speed, well, that depends on whether it's an open or a closed junction. Same as our gear. If it's a closed junction, we know we're going to come up and stop at it. If it's an open junction, our speed may be around 10 miles an hour. Our gear would most likely be second. However, if it is a closed junction, we know we're just going to come up, stop, and then go into first gear. So that leaves look. Now, when we look, it has to be a minimum observation of right, left, and right. And on the DVSA website, Chris, this has been the #1 reason for failing your driving test for at least the last 20 years, observation at junctions, and I'll explain why. So as we approach the junction, we want to look to the right. Are there any cars coming from the right? Do they have a signal on as if they're going to turn? Are they slowing down as well? Now, if we see the signal go on and them start to slow down, we can go. However, if they've just gone round a roundabout or pulled out of a junction, they may have left that left signal on. So just because we see the left signal, it doesn't mean that we can go. But if we see the signal go on and then begin to slow down, then that is a good indication that we can now move off. But before we do, we've got to look left, because anybody that's just driven past us could pull up. They could live there, they might just be some shops shops and they want to go shopping, if we're pulling out looking right, then we're just going to go into the back of them. We also need to look on the left to see if there are cars parked on the other side of the road, because if they are, it means any traffic coming towards us is going to be on our side of the road. And again, if we're pulling out just looking to the right, the first thing we're going to see are two very big lorry headlights coming towards us and think, I wonder where they've come from. So this is why, Chris, even on your driving test, if you go round at a junction without right, left, right, it's an automatic fail, because basically the examiner is saying it was only luck that there wasn't something coming towards you that you didn't end up having a head-on collision with. Then we double check once more to the right just to make sure it is still safe, and if it is, we can go. So now if they're emerging right again, by use of questions, which mirrors did you use to turn right or move away from the side of the road? What signal? Well, we're going to use exactly the same with that. Our position is the same as turning right, which is alongside the center line, just to the left of it. Our speed and our gear is dependent on whether it's an open or closed junction. If it was open, then second gear. If it's closed, first gear. Again, it's just variable depending on the junction that's in front of you. The main bit will be the look on approach to it. So the first thing we want to do is look to the right. Again, we're looking for any traffic coming towards us, because we've got to think this time, could I walk across the road before that car got to me? And that determines whether we go or not. So again, just thinking as a pedestrian and looking at gaps rather than cars. So now we look left. We're looking for any cars coming, because we've got to think, can I walk across the road and back again before they get to me? Because not only are we pulling out into their path, we've then got to try and get up to the speed limit of the road as well. So we've got to allow more time than usual. Now the main thing is, as we look, we may see the first car, the red car, signalling. So that means we know he's going to slow down to turn. However, our focus is actually on the second vehicle, because as that vehicle moves across by the center white line like we could, if it's a fairly wide road, that second vehicle is just going to go around the car that's turning right. It could even be there's a motorbike there. So in both instances, we know not to go until we've got a clear road to turn into. Now we're just going to look at a couple of different scenarios. So our first one is when we come up to a junction and we see a car flash. What we have to do is make sure that it's actually for us, because the car on the right could be flashing the car on our left that he's okay to come through. Perhaps he's just annoyed that he has come through, so he's flashing. But we're at the junction thinking, oh great, he's giving way to me. Well, that doesn't mean that that's true. In our bottom picture, we can see that the car may be flashing the red car that's pulled out in front of him. Perhaps he's annoyed. Perhaps the green car is flashing the cyclist because he knows him. But again, the danger for your learners is they just see the car flash, presume it's for them, and then try and pull out. In our picture on the right, we've got the traffic or even parked vehicles either side. So we know we have to use what's called peep and creep, where we need to come out slowly forward and then see if it's clear before we decide whether to keep going or not. In our picture on the left, we've got a junction that's on a blind bend or a really sharp bend. It may even be a stop junction. Again, the key with these is perhaps getting the pupil to wind their window down so that they could hear it if anything was coming, but just making sure it was safe before deciding to pull out. The picture on the right shows us at a junction that comes out onto a national speed limit road. So again, it's a case of leaving a bigger gap before deciding to pull out, and bearing in mind if there is anything coming towards us, we have to pull out and get to the speed limit before he gets to us. In our final picture, we have the situation where our view can be blocked by the front pillars of the car. They're known as A pillars. And now, because they have airbags and side protection and all of that in modern cars, those pillars are getting a lot thicker. So what you can find is when you look right and left, that you don't actually see what's there. So sometimes it's a good idea just to remind your pupils to move their head to look either side of those pillars, because if there are any cyclists there, they genuinely won't see them. And that's our briefing for emerging left and right. Now, in this video, we've just explained all the pictures that you'll find in the briefing folder for your lesson plans. However, you don't need to use them all. You just need to use the ones that are right for the junctions that you're using. So if you know that it's just a basic junction, just do the basic approach, left and right. And the main key is being able to identify what the junction is to begin with. But on the other hand, if you know the junction you're coming up to does have parked cars on both sides of the road, then after the basic version, you might just want to go into that. And also there's the option that once you've done the basic junctions, but you're progressing your pupil, you can then pull up closer to a busier junction and then just go through a quick briefing on explaining about how to creep and peep to come out through the traffic. So as I say, it's not all to be used in one briefing. Generally, your briefings are about 5 to 6 minutes maximum. The key is in the word brief. So the more you know about your ADI briefing folder and the lesson plans, the more you can adapt them to the needs of your pupil and the specific road conditions and junctions that you're going to use to do the emerging left and right. So we hope that this video has been a help to you in your understanding of how to teach emerging left and right. If it has, please feel free to leave us a comment and share and subscribe to our videos. So my name's Chris from Driver Training Limited. Remember, teach well, drive safely, and we'll see you all again in our next video.